Making daylighting animations for an interior space in SketchUp is fairly straightforward. Start with a view that has windows, of course, since you need windows to let the sun in. And the simplest thing you can do is go to the View menu and turn on Shadows. And like magic, you have shadows in your space. And what SketchUp does, it figures out where your project is, and then it casts the shadows based on the date that are set up here. I have included the shadows toolbar in my interface. You can add that by customizing your toolbar. Now, you might say, well, what if I want a little bit more control, controlling the darkness of the shadows and all that? Well, first of all, you'll want to check the model info of your project and make sure it's geolocated where the project actually is. I went to the model info under the window pull down menu and checked the geolocation. You can set a manual location and clear it and add imagery and stuff like that. Now, to change the shadows in greater detail, you can go to the window pull down menu and choose shadows. And again, the PC and Mac versions are slightly different here, but basically they're fairly similar. It has the same date and time sliders that are in the default menu. So for example, if I want more dramatic shadows, I should probably move to somewhere like January, where the shadows reach very deep into the space. And I could type in a date as well. And then what you'll want to do is figure out what time morning is, sunrise. And SketchUp, as you drag the date left and right, it will change the sunrise and sunset time. And what you'll also want to do, because we're going to create an animation, you'll want to take a look at the dark and lightness settings to really get a dramatic look. Obviously, we're not rendering this with any electric lighting, so it's going to be a fairly stark image. And of course, you want to cast shadows on all different faces. So anyway, what I do, I set it to dawn, sunrise, on the date of my choice. And of course, if you're doing a solar study in a particular location where you want to know business hours, for example, you would want to change that to fit your location. Anyway, I'm going to update my saved scene here. And then I will drag the time over to the sunset, okay, which looks like 4 p.m. And then I'm going to add a scene. And that's really all there is to it. When you switch from one scene to the next, what you will see is it goes from dawn till dusk. Now, my computer can't quite process that fast enough, and that's why you don't really see much in terms of the way the shadows draw themselves across the floor. Now, before actually creating the movie file, one thing you'll want to do is make sure you set up the animation so that you have a nice, long, slow progression of your shadows. And to do that, you go to the View pull-down menu under Animation. This is the same for Mac or PC. Go to the Settings menu. You can also find this in the Model Info menu. Anyway, and what I like to do is I enable scene transitions. You don't need any delay time, which, if there were more than two scenes, would mean that it would pause on each scene. And then you want to choose the transition time. Now, this is really going to determine how long your video is going to be. Because you only have two scenes, so it's going to be basically 15 seconds total. Anyway, and then once you've set these two up, and of course if you have more than two scenes, then you'll want to change this to be more in tune with how long a video you're hoping to get. But we really just want to see how the shadows look here. Really, the best thing to do is to export an animation of this daylighting movie, and that's fairly straightforward. You go to the File, Export, Animation menu, And obviously, one of the things you'll want to do is make sure that you choose a video format. AVI is a format more common, I believe, on Windows machines. MP4 seems like something that is a little more universal, so we'll choose that one. And the big thing with these animations is you'll want to set the options. The options are going to determine how nice an image you're going to get. And 1080 full HD is probably just fine. You could customize it and make it even bigger. And then the frames per second is really what you're going to want to amp up a little bit here. I'm going to use a cinematic frames per second just because I can. And what this will do is this will create many more frames in between the start and end of the movie. Finally, you're going to want to loop it to the starting scene, and I like to have an anti-alias as the background rendering. And what that does is that will smooth out any curves. This particular scene has a lot of curvy furniture in there. Anyway, there's a number of other things. You can preview the frame size and that sort of thing. But when you hit OK, make sure that you save it into a folder that's going to make sense for you, and call it a name that makes sense. I'll call this one Daylighting Animation, MP4, and click Export. And you can see that the animation moves very smoothly across the floor of the project. And there you have it.